let's talk about our main topic of the day, which is veterans. And
Right.
before we get into this, I want to first kind of recognize some of the veterans that are in that are in the audience and also that we know personally. Mr. Bill Weaver, of course. Mr. Bill was in the Army, and then I believe he was a police officer right after that. So thank you to Bill. Thank you to Jerry. I think Jerry's in the audience right now. Thank you, Jerry, for his service. Jerry, I believe, was in the Army as well. Taylor Barker. Taylor, I can't remember what branch Taylor was in. It might have been Guard, but Taylor was a veteran. And Mr. Paul French was in the Navy, so thank you to him. For those audience members out there, if you know Paul Marhofer, I think Paul was a veteran as well. And Robert, I think Robert Green was also a veteran. So thank you to those guys. If I got that wrong with Paul and Robert, I'm sorry, guys, but some guys talk about their veteran service and some guys don't. So
Personal
Right.
preference.
I didn't know
there.
that. Yeah, I didn't know that Paul French was in the military until probably a couple months ago, and I've known Paul for a while. So, but yeah, so thank you to those veterans, and then let's talk about some veteran stuff, especially with the trucking industry. So, GI Bill. Let's talk about the GI Bill and CDLs and how people can get involved.
Yeah, well, I mean, the post 9/11 GI Bill and the VA apprenticeship program. Basically, the U.S. government has created several programs that make it easier for ex-military personnel to re-enter the civilian workforce and receive necessary skills training. So your GI Bill can be used to get you some CDL training, I believe, for you and your dependents. So
Wow.
it's a really great option for anyone that's coming back, entering into the workforce after being in the military. Because truck driving can be a very lucrative career.
Yes.
It's definitely something that continues to support the country. And so, for people who have that mentality that they want to serve their country, truck driving is just a natural
Yeah.
stepping stone, I believe.
And I love that the GI Bill can kind of, I mean, obviously getting your CDL, it's not free, right? It's a
There are trucking companies that offer free CDL
Yeah.
training if you come drive for them for a certain amount of time.
right, but I mean, like to get your CDL independently would be, I've heard between $2,000 and $5,000 to get training for it and your
Wow.
test and all that kind of stuff. So,
Yeah.
getting a CDL is not cheap. Some people think that it is, but it's not cheap. And so the GI Bill helps veterans, and specifically veterans and their dependents,
Yeah.
get their CDL or training of some kind, maybe additional training to do different kinds of loads, heavy loads, toxic waste, whatever it is. So
Yeah.
the GI Bill is really set up to help veterans get into the trucking industry and any kind of industry after.
And there are some requirements. I mean, you can't be dishonorably discharged and things like that. There is a minimum amount of active duty time or military experience that may be required, but that varies by company.
Right, yeah.
So if you have served our country, but you didn't have a certain amount of time in, maybe you got discharged for medical reasons, even in basic training, I still would consider that veteran status personally.
Yeah.
Because you did go to serve our country. Maybe you just got hurt when you were in basic training.
Right,
and,
right.
You should still get the benefits, I think, personally. But there may be some people who disagree with that. So there are several other things. There are waiver programs to get the commercial learner's permit. There are lots of different trucking companies that are either advertising to veterans or actively seeking or recruiting ex-military. Including on the list is Avra Express, which we mentioned
talked about that
last
last week,
week.
yeah.
So they've got a lot of good stuff going on for them. But there's A&R Logistics, Bar None, Cargo Transporters. I'm not going to read all of these guys, but
Swift.
Cypress Truck Lines. There is Swift also, JB Hunt.
Oh, Swift.
Jim Palmer Trucking, Night Transportation. There was one
is Prime on there? Prime?
Prime, I believe, is
Prime
on
Inc, yeah.
here.
Yeah.
And then U.S. Express was one that I saw in my research that does a lot of like sign-on bonuses and
For
things like
veterans?
that for veterans specifically.
For only, okay, cool.
So U.S. Express is a great option for veterans who are looking to get into the trucking industry that might need a little bit of extra cash. Because when you come back from living on base or you don't have any assets or anything
I
like
was going to
that.
say the government owns you basically, so
Well, I mean, you don't have a house necessarily or an apartment to come back to. So having a bonus for you.
Is great, yeah, to get you started back
to get
into
you
regular
started.
civilian life, yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
Jerry says TMZ also has TMC, sorry, also has a veterans program as well, and also Jerry served in the Air Force, not the Army, so I apologize for that, Jerry. But yeah, so a lot of companies do have those veterans programs, and I mean, I don't know what the numbers are. Someone would have to do a poll, but I would say between 25 and 35% of the trucking populations, maybe more honestly, is veterans of some kind, or is a veteran of some kind. So it's a very popular second career after the military for a lot of men and women that serve. So it's the GI Bill does a fantastic job of setting people up for success after the military, and a lot of people use that for the CDL and other kind of education after they get out. So trucking is a very popular industry for veterans, and we support them 100%. So what else are we going to talk about for veterans?
Well, that was basically all I had for veterans in particular. But my dad and my grandpa also served. My grandpa was in the Navy, and my dad was in the Army. So, for me personally, anyone that actually goes out and volunteers. I mean, we don't have a armed forces that requires service like a lot of countries.
Conscription, yeah.
But so anyone that volunteers to serve their country, I think, is due respect and honor. So we just want to thank you, and that's why we want to support Operation Song in March, because of their mission to support veterans and to provide therapy and to help them in some of the negative things that come about because of serving.
It's definitely a sacrifice, right? Like, I mean, they sacrifice, their
time,
their mental well-being,
even
their
physical health,
health,
yeah, for sure.
just to protect and serve our country.
Time
So
with
yeah,
their family.
I mean, they lay down their life and they make an oath at the beginning to lay, to give the ultimate sacrifice if needed.
Yeah,
and
they put the Constitution in this country before their own needs. And so if you don't know what Operation Song is, if you're just coming in and listening now, Operation Song is a charity that benefits veterans who want to tell their story. Basically, these songwriters help these veterans by writing their story in song. And they've written over 600 songs at this point that helps veterans to overcome some of the PTSD, traumatic brain injury, and things of that nature that go along with the military service. And so, Operation Song, thank you again.
Another charity that I'd like to bring up that was actually linked in our chat earlier is called Trucks for Vets, and so I'm on their webpage right now, and that was linked by, let me get the name right, I can't remember who linked it. Terry Hall. Okay, so Trucks for Vets, which is another, obviously a veterans organization, is based in Ohio, and they do CDL training for veterans specifically. So if you'd like to check that out, that is trucksforvets.org. But there are plenty of resources out there for truckers of all kinds of people wanting to become a driver, people wanting to get more education, but veterans in general. The trucking industry, I would say personally that the trucking industry does a fantastic job of taking care of veterans.
Absolutely.
And a lot of the drivers that I know that are veterans or know veterans are very respectful to them and go the extra mile in order to support our veterans and our armed service members. So thanks again to all the people that serve. I have friends that have served and are still serving. All the people that served before my generation and all that kind of stuff. Thank you to you guys because we would not be here without you.